Welcome back to the Tipton Thrives podcast. My name is Riley, and I'm, as always, joined by Mayor Schmicker. We have an exciting episode this week, or this month. This is now the third episode, and we are excited to bring our first guest onto the podcast. So we're going to be speaking, or Keegan's going to be speaking with Dr. Glaze. And if you want to just give a quick preview of what you two talked about.
Yeah, we started talking about this concept of growth. It's of course, a term we've heard a lot over the last decade, probably a couple decades. And so we just spent a little time talking about that, the need and importance of it, some of what it might be for Tipton. You know, being so close to other urban counties, it's easy to think about or assume what growth might mean, but we try to bring that back home to Tipton and what does that mean to us and why it's important. Yeah.
Before we get into that conversation, if you haven't already, a lot of you watch this on Facebook, but if you want to save it for later, watch it later, please subscribe to the city's YouTube channel. It's just City of Tipton, or you can also listen to this, just the audio version, on Spotify if you just search Tipton Thrives podcast. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into that conversation.
Let's go. Well, first, Dr. Glaze, I want to thank you for taking the time, joining us today for this discussion. So thank you for taking that time.
Thank you for the invitation.
And for today, we really want to focus on this concept of growth. We hear it a lot. We've heard it a lot in this community. And as we move forward, trying to be a little more purposeful and intentional about some of those efforts. But today, I think it's a lot about defining growth and what does it mean to us here in Tipton? Why is it important? Not only for the city of Tipton, but also the school corporation. I've been trying to establish and have established a working relationship. Certainly, I've known you before this role, but to make sure that the city and the school corporation are working in tandem where possible. So, because you are the greatest asset that we have here in the city of Tipton is our school corporation. So, when we think about growth and its importance, some of it is acknowledging some of the realities, right? From a city of Tipton perspective, we've been in population decline since probably the 60s, and that certainly has cascading effects throughout the community, but more importantly to the school corporation, and we've seen those effects at the school corporation, right?
That's correct. I mean, it's been a situation where, where we might have 120 kindergartners who are starting. Last couple of years, we've had around 90. And so it's kind of indicative of the current trends in Tipton County where the birth rate is dropping and continues and is kind of forecasted if everything stays as is, it'll continue to decline. The birth rate in Indiana in general has dropped.
Really?
So again, it's this, we're not unusual in this realm, but we definitely want to be cognizant of that as we're moving forward. And but for us, in the last, I get a printout from the state, kind of telling where students are going, how many students that we have coming into us, and ins and outs essentially of student enrollment. And the thing that it really sticks out in my head is we continue to drop the number of available school-age students or kids in our attendance area.
Okay.
So we've dropped in the last year about 100 as far as in general, just student-aged or school-aged students that would be potentially in our attendance area.
So going back to this birth rate, because I think that's an interesting point. Not only are we seeing at a local level in Tipton County a decrease in our birth rate, less people are having children. Of course, we're seeing it across the state of Indiana, but then exacerbated by the realities of, as an aging community, we know that there's also the end of life that is part of that equation too. So not only are we losing members of our community because of age and death, but then we're also birthing less children. So it's really exacerbating the issue here which I think comes back to the point of as a community, we've got to create some sustainable growth because it is just that, trying to sustain the very things that have made Tipton such an attractive community. So certainly having challenges at school corporation, of course, and we know this has been reality for a while now, but with school choice and the opportunity for children to just go anywhere and everywhere. And that's we're pretty close to a lot of communities here in Tipton. And it's sometimes a great thing, but there's also the other edge of that sword too, that with the increased competition, and certainly I'm seeing this on my side at the city of Tipton, but with resources being so constrained, the challenges really get overwhelming sometimes, trying to find what are the solutions or what are the priorities that we should be investing our dollars in to make the biggest impact. So certainly you guys have felt that as well, trying to, how do we prioritize with all the needs that still exist?
Right.
So staff that we need to pay and benefits we need to pay for, but then also like what are the things that give us the greatest opportunity to move it forward?
Well, I think one of the big parts of this has been just completing our $30 million renovation.
Yep.
I mean, we, again, your facilities are what bring people.
Correct.
And so a lot of people might say, well, why did you spend all of that money? And, understandably, people are going to question that. Yep. But I believe that, our facilities needed to be upgraded. Mm-hmm. And again, when we're competing with Hamilton County and we're competing with Howard County, we want to make sure that we are, our facilities are top notch. Yeah. And I think we made the right investments. So I feel like that in a lot of ways, the money we've spent is out there and, visible. So people driving by the schools right. are seeing that we're investing in the school. And again, you're exactly right. I mean, everybody is clamoring for those same dollars. For us, we get funded by the number of students that we have attending, and that gets more and more difficult as our enrollment continues to decline. In the last couple of years, we've actually had more students that are coming into Tipton than we've had in several years. So Good. That's definitely a positive. Yep. But we're all, again, just kind of clamoring for those same kids. And it would be really great if we had the opportunity just to grow within our district boundaries.
Correct.
And that would, I think, make a big difference because even though we're very happy with the people who move in and not move in, but people that are transferring in rather. Yep. Still, it'd be nice to have people living here in Tipton. Right. There's a little bit more investment
Correct.
when you're living in the community and you're sending your kids to the school. Yeah. And again, it just kind of makes, in my opinion, a little bit of a difference as far as the kids and the how long they're going to stay and how invested they are in the school.
Yeah. So of course, school revenues are kind of complicated because you can receive them from a variety of places. Correct. That's not unlike the city of Tipton either. But so there's a per student revenue source that you receive.
Right.
Is that the preferred or maybe the biggest priority at the most school corporation is the per student? If we can get that to a certain number, or is it you prefer it in property tax? Like what is the number one preference?
Well, I mean,
in the short term,
the formula is complicated.
Yeah,
and when back in 2008, when the state went to this per pupil funding formula, they essentially took what was paid for in property taxes at the local level and then collected it and then redistributed it from the state level. So that ended up with that per pupil dollar amount. And you often hear the legislature say, well, 50% of the budget is on schools. Well, that was by design. That's again, that choice that they made. Yeah. And so, again, back in 2008, they were looking at property tax relief.
Yep.
And this was
sounds like a deja vu.
Kind of, yeah, doesn't it? And so that's kind of where we ended up with this per pupil dollar amount. For Tipton, it's around $8,000 a kid. And so it's substantial.
Right.
But it really just takes everything because primarily those dollars that we're getting in that per pupil are what are collected in the education fund. Yep. And 87% of that money goes to staff. So it's not like it's, a big bucket of money that we're, going on vacation or anything like that. I mean, but it's a lot of that money is again appropriated for the classroom, which is really what we want. And but then there's another pot of money that is also still from that traditionally collected property tax, and that's our operation fund. But that's what pays the utilities. That's what makes sure that we have custodians and all those things that are operational for the buildings. So once again, all the funds are important. So if we get 300 new students but we don't have the money in property tax dollars to fund a bus to go get them, then we're kind of in trouble there. And so they really just kind of commingle and they all kind of work together, even though they're separate. But it all kind of comes together. So I can't really say that one is more important than the other. But I would just say, once again, when we're looking at that funding, again, growth is important. And if we can grow, there is some opportunity to have a little bit more revenue. And at least on the education fund side. And so hopefully with that would also be some increase on the operations side through property tax revenue.
So from a population perspective, and this is old data, trying to recall this, but do we know the average size of a family in Tipton? Recent numbers, it seems like it was maybe 2 point something or maybe 3 point something, so maybe 4-person household.
I'm thinking more of a 4-person household. I'm guessing. I'm not
correct.
I'm not exactly sure on that, but I'm thinking that's probably about right.
Possibly two parents and then maybe 2 children.
Correct.
So then you mentioned your kindergarten class sizes used to be how large? 120?
We had 120. My first couple of years here, we were around 120, and now we've kind of dropped down to 90. When I'm saying 90, I'm saying like 90 to 100, so somewhere around in there. And so again, those numbers, those numbers make it challenging,
right?
Because we're graduating more students than we're enrolling in kindergarten. So it just makes it. It just kind of compounds the whole enrollment issue.
Well, certainly from an every year perspective, and frankly, for a city to try to figure out how to find 20 to 30 more kindergartners right in the short term, that's a pretty tall ask. For a community that hasn't seen large scale residential growth in decades. What a tall order, which is certainly the challenge we have, or I have on my plate, is how do we secure more of those families. And then you talk about the need for facility improvements, right? Because those are the things that attract people to the school corporation. And then from a community perspective, this idea that we need parks that do the same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? That's usually some of the reasons why people visit a community is either for their parks. Downtown is another great attractor.
Exactly.
So trying to prioritize some of those investments. So I have to give kudos to the school corporation that I do think a lot of the investments we've seen over your tenure, especially, at least that's my opinion, that have been a lot of visible projects that not only were necessary, but helped to market and promote the school in a positive way. And with that, and frankly, the cities that followed in your footsteps was with branding. And I have to believe that the school's branding has turned out to be quite successful in your efforts.
I would agree. I would agree. And that's been, something that we've really worked on. And I take great pride in seeing the branding, and I'm excited with the number of people that are wearing the new Blue Devil and just everything else that we've been able to do as part of that. And again, there's certainly some disagreement there. Not everybody loves the new Blue Devil, and I'm certainly aware. But I think the branding is important, and I do think that having a distinctive mascot that no one else has is the way to go. And so I believe that that was a key component, and something that the board started really in earnest about 4.5 years ago. So again, those things have made a difference, and I do believe that does get your brand out there,
Right.
and hopefully people will associate your brand and
Correct.
and want to be a part of whatever's happening there. So, and you guys have been doing a great job at the city level with that, with
Right.
your rebranding, and I think that that's a very nice step, and I think that there's probably need a little more blue in the branding.
You had to go there, didn't
but that's
Man.
okay. We'll take it. The green's all right.
And what I shared with people is because we do have blue in the palette, but it's not the primary,
Okay.
and it was intentional because what at least my assessment and feedback to the group is the school corporation, in my opinion, owns blue.
Yeah,
and I wanted to offer, rather than compete with the school corporation on which blue was Tipton blue, let's let you define what Tipton blue is,
Right.
because you are the Blue Devils.
Sure.
But nonetheless, we've had the feedback that Tipton
I'm
is
totally
blue.
teasing you. Yeah.
And I guess we were fortunate to some degree because there is such love and affection for mascots and branding, and the school just frankly had a more well-established brand than the city of Tipton did. So it's not like we were competing with some other idea of what Tipton is, but certainly give credit to you guys for your efforts there. And we're trying to just brand with what is Tipton, right?
Absolutely.
What is this place that we all call home? And some of it's futuristic or thinking into the future of, we believe this place is rooted in opportunities across the community, all these small businesses that have flourished over time and become something quite impressive. And I think another credit to the school corporation in your tenure has been the ability to bring in the community, the businesses in this community, whether it's things like Tipton Ford Field or the Encompass Inferno, but it goes beyond that, right? The other partnerships and opportunities for people to get engaged, Total Seed, the greenhouse.
Yes, exactly.
But are there other unique opportunities that you're engaging the business community and the school corporation beyond that?
We're still, part of our Friends of the Inferno campaign. That's still kind of ongoing. But again, I'm always just simply amazed at the generosity of the community and the way that so many businesses and so many people in our community are just willing to invest in the school. They feel good about the school, feel good about the direction. And that doesn't happen just everywhere. And particularly in schools our size, it's really quite unusual. But it's just an amazing part of being in Tipton and seeing that type of investment. I mean, literally, when we're looking at it over the past 5 years, well over $500,000 donated, towards, sponsorship that actually has gone to make facilities better, build facilities.
Sure.
And so again, without partners and without groups that are willing to be out there and help us, we couldn't do what we were able to do.
Yeah.
And so that's something that is very, very Tipton, I think, but also a great opportunity, that seed of growth that we can use to propel us into bigger and better things. Yeah. So again, I think that's so important that we not forget that the people that are willing to invest in our schools.
And that's why when to start this year, I unveiled our strategic vision for the city of Tipton, and reinvigorating a sense of community pride was on that list. And I was intentional because of the very thing you just said, that this fondness, this passion and belief, love for this community is so palpable. And I think sometimes we get caught in this trap of, we focus on maybe a singular issue or critique ourselves too harshly, and sometimes we lose sight of how great this place is.
Exactly.
And so by trying to do our own part in the city of Tipton, reinvigorating the sense of community pride, we could be the ambassadors, the champions, the cheerleaders for this community, and that's very powerful.
I agree.
If you have the residents of this community excited and interested, willing to participate, to talk to their friends who aren't from Tipton about Tipton, and that actually has cascading effects too.
Exactly.
So to continue to hear that you're doing with the school corporation, you're experiencing that community pride, and we're hoping to do our part to reinvigorate it a little bit. Yeah. We want to get a little storytelling happening within the city of Tipton, people sharing why they love this place. why they've started a business here, why they still live here, why they raise their children here.
Right.
All because not only a reminder for the rest of us, but then we actually start pumping that outside of Tipton County.
Right.
And all of a sudden people are asking the question, well, what if we lived in Tipton County?
Yeah.
So it's really great to hear that you've experienced that too, that just that the community pride is just so palpable here in Tipton.
It is unbelievable. And again, it's just, it's as crazy as, coming to a football game on a Friday night or, sectional games, with basketball or whatever, or just any kind of, go to any kind of a band concert or choir concert and, community theater, everything. I mean, people in Tipton just really support the schools, and they support what we do, regardless of what it is.
Right.
And so we're just very fortunate. And again, I think that's the core of community that maybe we can build from. And, again, giving those people that are outside, just say, wow, I'd like to be a part of that. Yeah, exactly. And so again, I feel like that a lot of good things, a lot of good, I guess, synergy is coming out of what we're trying to accomplish here. Correct. And it would be great to see that become a little bit of growth.
Correct. Materialize into new homes.
Exactly.
And new
Absolutely.
businesses. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so definitely would be beneficial for both parties.
And some of it even, it's kind of the last topic I want to touch on before letting you go. It's not one we have a full picture of yet, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, just because we don't know the realities yet. But is the SB 1, Senate Bill 1. I've been spending a lot of time, and I'm sure you have been too, trying to understand with the conversation at the state level about property tax reforms. And we've gone through this exercise once already under Mitch Daniels' administration, where they implemented the tax caps, and then even Mike Pence, when he took office, had a similar. He tried to do some further reforms, and so what we're seeing is really just this challenge of, as cities, school corporations, counties, townships, how do we continue to provide the same level of service that people have come to expect? How do we not only pay the staff, but then provide them the cost of living increases that they require to raise their own families? And it's not really a question here, just there's a really challenging time that we're just trying to figure out what are the strategies. We expect that we're going to have to do some really significant reform on our own budgets. And it's going to come down to what are the things that are, everything seemingly is a priority, but it's okay. Quite literally, what is the number one, the number two, the number three? And at some point, you're going to draw a line. And sorry, everything below number 10 is just not getting funded this year.
Right.
And that's just where we're potentially heading to. So I just more of an acknowledgement that this is going to be a tough year, and just trying to figure out how do we mutually create successes that the city can secure some new residents, new businesses, and at the same time, new families and students, hopefully, to get into enrollment in kindergarten.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to, if the bill would go through as written, which
it changes
whether it's going to go into or not, that would be around $700,000 that we would lose. And that's significant.
Correct.
That is significant. And that is primarily coming out of that operation fund. So, which are, paying the insurance, paying the utilities, paying for buses, paying for bus drivers, custodians. Again, we're already fairly lean in those areas. Right. Not to say that we can't, look at other things that we may have to reduce. Yep. But I don't know. I don't know really where we would cut to make that work. We've run some scenarios, and we've looked at some ways that we can reduce some spending, but it's going to come down to, again, do you patch the roof or do you replace the roof?
Correct.
And so you're, again, just like with your house, do you Band-Aid the furnace and hopefully it'll get, through the winter, or do you replace it? Yep. These are the questions that we're going to have to start asking. Yeah. And that becomes really challenging, because then you're really not getting ahead of any kind of maintenance or any kind of facility improvement,
Yep.
you're always playing catch up.
Correct.
And so, and again, that is the challenging part. We spend a little over $1 million just in bus drivers
Sure.
and buses, and we live in a very we have a great distance to drive,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. And we don't want the kids to be on the bus
Correct. For
longer
Yeah.
than 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
So we may have to start looking at kids being on a bus for an hour and a half. In the morning and then in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I would hate to see
Correct.
that happen.
Absolutely.
But those are the kinds of things that we would have to really take a good strong look at.
Sure.
And again, we have the opportunity to find some efficiencies, and again,
Correct.
we want to. We feel like that we have really tried to put in as many efficiencies as possible,
Yep.
but we again at this point, and I've said this before, it comes down to programming. We've
Yeah.
been able to maintain the programming that we've had. We've been able to maintain the services that we've had,
Yep.
but any real significant tax revenue loss from property taxes
Yeah.
would really make us have to start taking a good strong look
Yeah.
at what we offer and how we're able to accomplish our mission. It would be really hard.
Yeah. And I think the school, just based on my brief stint on the school board, I feel like the school probably did a better job solving macro problems as a corporation. I think that's the one thing I've been working on since last year is we've done a good job up to this point solving problems at a department level.
Yeah.
And so whether it was vehicles or equipment or training, what we're trying to do now, and it started even before the new year, was how do we start solving those more in a macro setting where if we know all these departments need vehicles, certainly there's got to be a comprehensive approach that we can take to solving the needs for vehicles. Or
Sure.
Insurance is one that we've solved as a macro problem, but should we be bidding that out on a more frequent basis just to make sure it's our second highest expense in the city of Tipton? So to have some focus and just challenging, make sure that we're getting the best rates, the best benefits for our employees. So that's certainly something that we are already doing, and now it's okay. What was strategic last year is now becoming a necessity this year.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's going to be a busy year, but like you said, there's still a lot of changes that are happening. Language that has been rewritten.
Oh yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, maybe it went from here was the solution to 180 degrees. Now this is the solution. So, but just being aware that that's going to be a tough year for all of us in 2025. But certainly appreciate your leadership at the school corporation, willingness to help create some opportunities in Tipton County, and then the improvements that we've seen at the school corporation. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, I'm very excited with it, and kind of glad it's nearing its end.
Yeah,
we're just kind of finishing up a few high school classrooms, and once that's done, we'll be done.
The big old check mark.
Yeah. It'll be nice not to have that, looming in the back.
Right.
But it's been great, and it's been a great experience, and so definitely great to be part of this team with the city, and I do feel like that we have a great partnership, and I feel like that together we can really solve some good problems, and make some great things happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Glaze, for your time
you.
today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.